I'm Shalini Koshi. I'm part of the People, Experience and Technology team. I'm excited and honored to be here with Dharmesh Mehta, who is the Vice President for Selling Partner Services worldwide. Dharmesh and his team work on cutting-edge technology to protect brands, sellers, customers from fraud and abuse every day worldwide.
I'm so excited to be here having coffee with Shalini. And Shalini, you've been here almost 17 years. You're one part super Amazon leader, one part amazing people experience and technology leader, one part mom to a 9-year-old Spider-Man from what I hear, one part avid fitness enthusiast and runner. This is going to be an exciting conversation.
Thank you so much, Dharmesh. The honor is all mine. I'm going to have the privilege to talk to you about Amazon's peculiar day one culture.
It is definitely peculiar, but I love our day one culture.
And as we get started, I just thought I'll ask you a curious question. When you were joining Amazon, let me just rewind 10 years back. What was your impression of day one? Did you think day one was about the day that you joined?
Yeah, that was day one. And then the next day was day two. And the next day was day three. And that's kind of what I thought it would be.
Not at Amazon.
Not at Amazon. It's always day one.
It's always day one.
Yep.
Dharmesh, now that you know that day two does not exist at Amazon,
That's absolutely true. We never want it to be day two.
what would you say that day one culture means to you?
Well, day one culture means so many different things. For me, it means things like always being customer obsessed, always thinking about how you're going to keep inventing for the customer. It means things like being super scrappy and impatient and wanting to move super fast, particularly through two-way doors. It means things like escalating and not letting things linger and being so optimized for speed and continuing to make progress. But I feel like we could talk about day one culture for hours and hours.
So we've intentionally paid focus on building a My Day One portal, which is a self-service way where there's a rich repository of resources where you can go practice and learn from.
Totally agree. I mean, there is a bit of like, you just think day one and you actually quite often are looking for those signals of something being day two, but it takes a while. I mean, I feel like I'm still learning about day one culture. And so I'm super excited about the My Day One portal and the rich set of resources that the team's put there to really help, new hires and people new to Amazon learn what does it mean to have day one culture.
You're saying that you need to put it in action. So why don't you tell us a practical example, Dharmesh, of seeing day one culture in action?
Well, absolutely. I mean, maybe one example I'd give you, a powerful service we provide for sellers and have for a long time is Fulfillment by Amazon.
Right.
Where sellers send us their products in bulk and we place them into fulfillment centers all across the country, sometimes across multiple countries. And we try and place it so that we've got the right amount of product in the right places so we can deliver fast when a customer places an order. So we can pick, pack, and ship that item as quickly as possible and get it to customers. Now that requires us to have the right quantities and the right amount of product in the right places. But like day one culture means you're really thinking about your customer, you're really understanding what they do, you're putting yourself into their shoes. And if you really listen to what sellers are saying, they actually want you to make fulfillment as a whole much easier for them and lower cost. You can look at just this one fee, but what the team's really done is said, how do we really think about this from a seller's perspective? And that starts with, they get a bunch of this product, how do they think about how they split it up? How do they think about how they send it to different places? And while they might like lower fees in one part, they really want lower fees end to end.
Yeah.
So just one little example, but day one culture really, one of the elements of it that I think is really important is just being super customer obsessed, really putting yourselves into the shoe of whoever your customer may be.
We've seen Jeff talk about day two, right? Could you tell us how you've spotted day two mentality?
There are signals that I think all of us have kind of a responsibility to be looking out for. And one of the common ones that I sometimes see is people who are not being owners. And so they kind of identify a problem and then they go, there's an opportunity there, there's something that should be fixed, but they go, well, I don't fully feel like that's my responsibility. And so they kind of let it go. And when you're day one and you're this fiercely hungry, innovator, if you imagine having a small business or being an entrepreneur, you would never let something like that slide. You felt like you're an owner for this whole thing. And so, one example of day two behavior you sometimes see is that, not really being an owner for Amazon
Yeah.
all up and letting something slide. And it doesn't mean you have to do everything yourself. You may have to go enlist help, may go involve someone else, but you got to make sure that that gap or that opportunity doesn't persist.
A follow-up question for you, Dharmesh, should be, how do you fend day two? Like, how do you wade away
Just
day two?
smack it away.
That too, but
So, no, it's hard. It takes time, and so there can be many elements. Sometimes it's just calling it out and doing that in a respectful manner, and go, when someone says, "Hey, there was an issue here," and they're like, "But I don't own it," and it's like, "But wait, we're all part of Amazon, and we all care about the customer, and so what are we going to do? Because we need to fix this." Another kind of behavior around day two that I sometimes see is teams not escalating when there's an issue, and they just let something fester, and you can tell there's teams that are stuck. So I've sometimes even tried to create forums that are natural places to have hotly debated topics, to resolve those issues and enable us to move quicker, and to try and make that part of how we operate. And so that can have a little bit more scale than just a one-off kind of anecdote and addressing it. So we, whether it's like the MBRs and QBRs we ask folks to start with what are your hotly debated topics, or I actually run a quarterly tech review where I ask a bunch of the senior tech leaders both what are the things they think are debates that are brewing that we just need to resolve, or I sometimes interject the ones I see. And it's just a forcing function to have a meeting where we're intentionally gonna knock some of these down and help people move faster.
Dharmesh, there is sometimes a conflict between leadership principles. As much as it's part of our DNA, we're expected to deep dive, yet show bias for action. You're expected to make the right decision, which is by getting diverse perspectives. And, that takes a little bit of time because you have to debate it out, but you also have to make high velocity decisions. What's a good practice for anybody who's a new leader that you would recommend on day one in making faster decisions?
Your comment on a lot of our leadership principles are in tension with each other, and not always, but certainly at some times. And you talked about a few examples, but there's so many where these interplay. And the easy choices are where things line up with all our leadership principles, and you go, it's easy to make this decision because we're all fully aligned. But it just reminds me of one of these day two behaviors that I was talking about around escalations, because when these two things are in tension, you're trying to move super fast. And I'm like, no, we really have to be right about this because I think it's a big one-way door.
Yeah, just unblock yourself to move fast.
Yeah, and it unblocks the other person too. They don't want to keep having this debate for weeks and weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. The way scaling today is very different from what it was 10 years ago, right? I mean, the complexity and the size that we operate at today was very different, many years ago, maybe when you joined. What does scaling yourself as a day one leader mean?
And you talked about for 10 years ago for me, when I joined Amazon a little over 10 years ago, I had a team of 4 people. And now the team's over 40,000. And often when people think scaling, that's exactly what they think about. They think about like, hey, as you have a larger organization, how do you scale? How do you scale beyond your line of sight? And that's certainly one way to scale, but there's so many other ways to scale. And what scaling really is how do you scale the impact you're having, the quality of what you can deliver, the speed at which you can deliver, and how do you continue to do that better and better over time? And so team size might be one dimension, but more often I find the way I'm trying to scale is how do I scale by creating better mechanisms, better alignment with other teams? How am I scaling through my partners? How am I teaching culture or priorities so that when I'm not in the room, I know that these 3 teams I work with are going to be, swimming towards the same goal, and if they're not, that they'll quickly bring it up, so I can get more involved and we can have the debates. But there's so many different dimensions to scaling that are really about, again, just having the notion of, as you continue to grow, how do you have more impact at higher quality and faster without always, I talk about that like leading beyond your line of sight. You're not going to be able to be in every room and in every discussion, but you want to continue to scale the impact you can have.
Dharmesh, my son probably doesn't know his multiplications or spellings as well. He knows his leadership principles thanks to his mother, because when he needs more iPad time and I say no, I tell him that this is a disagree and commit moment for you. But tell me, you're a household of Amazonians. Do you use this leadership principle with your wife, with your family, with anybody at all?
Well, it's funny. So my wife does not work at Amazon, never has. My kids are too young to work at Amazon. We have a lot of Amazon devices, and we all shop a lot at Amazon. And I do have to admit, the leadership principles do come out. Probably the most often is, I think it's very important for our children to learn to do chores and help around the house. And, I'll regularly find somewhere where I'm asking one of them, like, can you clean this up or fix this or take out the trash or, clean up this mess that was made. And, a common answer is like, I didn't make that mess. That's not my mess. Why should I clean it up? I'm like, you're not being an owner. This is our family. Like, we're all part of this family. We all have to clean up.
I'm going to use that with my son tonight. But thank you so much for your time. It's been very valuable and insightful for me. I'm hoping it is for our audience as well. And I really enjoyed having this time with you.
No, absolutely. It was great having this conversation, and I'd be happy to have coffee with Shalini anytime and to talk about Day One culture.
It's always day one.
It's always day one.